thank you to all who are tuning in. It's a privilege to be here and to share about driving the truth into Canada. It may sound like an odd title, sort of reminds you of a hammer or something, but we just want to briefly introduce ourselves. So I'll start with myself. My name is Jeremy Hooghiem. Most people call me Jer for shorter. And I work as the Eastern Operations Coordinator for CCBR. That encompasses a lot of roles. Part of that is driving the truth truck in the Greater Toronto area here in Ontario. I work out in the Mississauga office. I'm also involved in a little bit of the summer internship planning. I help coordinate volunteers for our Toronto outreach and activism teams, and doing a few odds and ends jobs around to maintain our office as well. And what about yourself, Brittany?
So I work in Calgary, and I started 3 years ago in 2017, and I started on as just mainly the truth truck driver there. And I still do that, but I've also added on a few other roles in admin, and as well as event planning. So things are exciting.
Fantastic. Yeah. I just want to encourage anybody who's watching on YouTube or Facebook, if you have any questions about our specific roles, particularly driving the truck, please feel free to ask in the comments section, and we should see your questions there. So Brittany, I'd like to ask you to expand a little bit on how you got to this point in the pro-life movement. What was it that made you compelled to be doing this work as a regular day-to-day job right now?
Well, that's a long story. Good thing we have time. Mm-hmm. So I can only ever remember being pro-life always. Can't really remember not being pro-life. I would have been maybe around 4 or 5 when I first learned what abortion is. And I remember being horrified that there's actually people out there killing their babies, when I was like, I love my siblings and I couldn't imagine something like that happening. And I knew even as a little child that something should be done. And I remember being very confused when my parents took me to a hike for life. I didn't really understand the concept in that time, but I just knew there were babies being killed and I was going to go save babies. And instead, I walked around a lake and I was like, this doesn't make sense. Of course, I understand a little bit more now what was the actual goal of a hike for life. But then I did not. But as I grew up, my dad got me involved more in the political side of things, helping out with elections and campaigns. And I would do all I could to help there. It wasn't necessarily my favorite thing, being in politics, but I knew it was important. So especially as I entered my teen years, I started getting more active, but I never considered actually going into pro-life work because I didn't think that was something I could do or something I could really make a difference in myself. But then in 2014, my mom was connected to someone in the Lethbridge area who did a number of CCBR's projects. And they're like, oh, you should get Brittany trained in the apologetics and she should start coming out. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't think so. But eventually I went out to a number of trainings and went out to my first choice chain out of high school, which I have to admit I was pretty terrible. But I still went out another time. And at that time, I went to the University of Lethbridge, where CCBR was doing an abortion awareness project. And so I spent a whole day and a half talking to people. And I would say that's where I really caught the vision of we can all make a difference. It's not just the people who are smarter than me. And from there, I kept going to more choice chains, more trainings. And in the spring of 2015, I was asked by Alex if I'd ever considered doing an internship. And I was like, no, I haven't, but it sounds cool. So I applied, and before I knew it, I was doing an internship in the same one that Jared did.
Absolutely.
And during that internship, then I would say I more fully caught the vision and really realized that I was passionate about this. This is something I could do, and we all need to do what we can to make a difference and change people's hearts and minds. And so from there, I came on staff in 2017.
Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate you sharing about catching the vision, because with something like abortion, it's a word you can hear so often and know, oh yeah, that's a bad issue. I'm supposed to care about that. We as pro-lifers are, I was raised to think that was wrong. But then to catch a real vision of what that actually entails and what a proper response to that should be, can be a whole nother stepping stone in our life. It relates to my own story a little bit. I also grew up in a pro-life family. I might say it was nominally pro-life in the sense of I knew that I should be pro-life, and abortion was not a good thing. It was a negative thing, but never affected anyone in my circles, at least not that I knew of. I participated in a few activities growing up, but I hardly heard the word or gave thought to the word at all, even through high school. And going to university, that's when many people start getting involved in pro-life activities, perhaps through a club on their local campus. I was at a Christian university, and I never gave 2 seconds of thought to the pro-life club. I thought, you know what, if you guys want to do that, sure, but like, I have more important issues to deal with. There's human trafficking out there. There is an environment that needs help. There is slavery going on in the world. I invested myself in those things, but it wasn't until a year after university when I was doing a certain schooling program in the States, and I was decided to volunteer outside of a Planned Parenthood in Colorado in the States. And as I was praying there, it really struck me that, wow, this Planned Parenthood abortion facility, this is actually where babies are going to die. This is where their lives are going to end, where their heartbeats will stop, where their bodies will be torn apart. And I remember it gripping me that day, and I thought, wow, I need to pray about this more. I need to be more involved. So I joined some pro-life outreach training that was at my school down there a few months later, and I thought, wow, this is a real battle to be involved in. But it still was something outside of my radar. If someone wasn't putting it in front of me, I wasn't really thinking about it. I could easily ignore it. So I went back to Canada. As a young man, I was looking for possible jobs. What should I invest in as a career? Should I return to more schooling? And it was in 2015 that I met some staff members from CCBR in Eastern Ontario. And they introduced me to CCBR strategy more. I saw pictures, I saw videos of children who had been killed by abortion. And I thought, you know what, maybe this is heavier on my heart for a reason. And they offered me a position in their summer internship. I applied hesitantly, thinking, oh yeah, sure, I'll apply to one other job. What's that going to do? And I got accepted. And I took it thinking, okay, this is going to be okay. This is going to be a good summer job. It'll be a good training experience. It'll prepare me for future ministry, perhaps in the church, perhaps in some other organization. It'll just be a good stepping stone, a one-time experience. But that's not what happened. It was a hot July day in summer of 2015, downtown Toronto on Front Street, I believe, for any who live near there, who have been there. And normally we would have a lot of good conversations with pedestrians walking by, asking them what they thought about abortion, engaging in good dialogue. But on this particular day, I could feel the apathy among the Canadians who were walking by, as people just seemed to smile at me as if pitying me that I didn't have a real job or something better to do with my time. And one man just stopping long enough to address the picture I was holding of a 10-week aborted child and telling me, you know what's even worse than that picture you're showing is taking away somebody else's right to choose. And I remember my heart being overwhelmed at that moment. And soon after, I gave my sign to my team leader, and I asked if I could just have some time by myself down the street. And I remember walking away out of earshot of my team and just sitting down on the curb there by myself in Toronto when no one else was around. And I cried. And I cried as I considered two really disturbing realities. First, that in a country like Canada, with so many freedoms, so many opportunities, such prosperity, a land of human rights where business and tourism and economy and things like this are growing and doing so well. Yet in a country like that, so many children could be being killed day after day, and so few people seem to care at all to do anything about it. And that weighed heavy on my heart. How does this happen? This is like a paradox in my mind. And it really bothered me. But what bothered me more as I considered that, and as the days went on, is that, you know what, I had been someone who knew about abortion. I had theological, philosophical, scientific, all kinds of reasons to know that abortion was wrong. And still, I had seen pictures of it. I knew what it was doing in my head, but I had been someone who just hoped that maybe there's someone else, somewhere else, who's going to be doing something about abortion, so that maybe I don't have to do something. I had let it happen. I had not cared about it. And I was convicted that summer. And in the following months, as I headed towards marriage and considered what kind of career I would have, I decided, you know what, for some reason, this has been put in my pathway. And I decided to join CCBR full-time. An opportunity came up for a position on staff, and I started in May of 2016. It's already been 4 years now. Oh, and it definitely feels like quite a journey sometimes.
Yeah.
And that brings us more to our specific role, what we're talking about, driving the truth home in Canada. So, Brittany, maybe you could give a brief answer for us to the question, what is the truth truck? And for our crew behind the scenes, maybe you could put up a picture showing people what this truck exactly is.
So the truth truck is basically a big box truck with banners on the side and on the back. And we drive it around wherever we can find people or traffic. Funnily enough, our goal often seems to be is go where other people might be trying to avoid, like the rush hour, the traffic jams. It's kind of our ideal spot.
Absolutely, yeah. I know for myself in the Greater Toronto area, a busy enough city, and for you in the Calgary area, where over 1 million people live, I believe. And there are plenty of people on the streets. There are pedestrians, there are transit takers, there are many people who we can reach on the road. And this truck, as Brittany mentioned, simply exposes the truth to Canadians in a way that can reach many people at a time. We do have other projects that have been mentioned earlier today. We have Choice Chain with handheld signs on the streets. We have banners that we can set up on the roadside to reach traffic on one street going by in one direction. We have postcards we can deliver door to door. We knock on doors. That's showing a few people. But with the truck, in a sense, we are multiplying our effect by not only making the images larger, but taking them onto multiple streets, stopping at streetlights where people will come into contact with the victims of abortion, where people who might otherwise go about their day will suddenly see what abortion does to a preborn child, whether they happen to see one of our other displays or not. Now, with our goal of getting Canadians to see that, getting views of abortion victim images, Brittany, can you tell us, our listeners, approximately how many people we are privileged to reach with this truck each day or each hour?
So the average each hour is about 3,000 people. Of course, it could be more, especially during rush hour. I think often the numbers are higher than that. So if we're going out, say, for just a truck run of 4 hours, then already we reach at least 12,000 people.
Absolutely, yes. That's a lot of people to reach with a message, and that's why we're so thankful for our supporters that enable us to have these trucks, to drive them on streets all over Canada's cities. We also, I should not forget to mention, have a similar, slightly different, but similar vehicle in Vancouver that also reaches the Vancouver area with large images on the side of a vehicle to tell the truth, to show the truth to people there. And as you can imagine, during a pandemic, there are somewhat less vehicles on the road, but that doesn't stop us from being able to reach people on our freeways in our downtown areas, pedestrians, those who are taking buses, streetcars, etc., with the truth. And the numbers can keep on going, even in a time like this.
Yeah,
And thankfully,
it's amazing how that this is still possible. We're very socially distant, but
absolutely.
you can reach a lot of people.
Yeah, we can still say stay self-isolated. This is one of our only projects that we can still bring abortion images directly to the public while following the orders of our public health officials in both in all the provinces that we work with. Now, thankfully, with the Truth Project, in some ways it's an exercise, with the Truth Truck Project, it's an exercise of faith in some ways that we don't get to see how everybody reacts to it. We don't know exactly who is going to see it and what they decide to do after that. But every once in a while, we are privileged to hear of the effects of driving this truck, of what actually happens because people happen to come across the path of this truck, and they can even change their mind on abortion. Brittany, I know you had an encouraging story from a couple of years ago regarding this. Would you be willing to share that, please?
Sure. So I believe it was the summer of 2017 when our interns were out on the street doing a choice chain, and they were approached by a woman. And this woman asked them, "Do you also have a big truck with pictures on it?" And they were like, "Yeah." And so she told them how that just the day before she had been in traffic with her friend, and her friend had been pregnant and was considering getting an abortion. In fact, she had an abortion already booked. And when they were in traffic and they saw this truck, she said that seeing those pictures changed her friend's mind. And she told the interns doing the choice chain, "Thank you so much for doing this." That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's so encouraging to hear things like that. Because I know for myself, sometimes driving the truck around for hours at a time, I'm hoping and I'm praying that this will impact people that will come across high school students or those who are considering abortions, that will come across people who need to be woken up to this, even pro-lifers who may not think abortion is that big of a deal, who aren't compelled to act against this killing yet, that they will also see it and do something. And to hear something like that, remember, I was delighted when I heard that news and when that testimony was first shared.
Yeah, same. Definitely sometimes I find it can get a little bit discouraging, just as opposed to, say, doing choice chains where you actually have those conversations, you actually come in contact with people. In some ways, even though you're not necessarily in control, you feel a little bit more in control. Whereas I find driving the truck, I'm reminded more how that God is in control of changing people's hearts and minds. And he just demands my obedience in bringing the message out there.
I could hardly agree with that more. I also want to give a shout out to a former CCBR staff member who I know labored a lot for us, I believe in both Calgary and Ontario, Francisco Gomez. I noticed he's in the chat, but one of the reasons I'm mentioning him is because he drove the truck in the past. He drove the Truth Truck, and in our records, I found another testimony where a couple was considering abortion. They found out they were pregnant. They weren't sure if they're going to choose life or not. And they called the number on the truck, left a message on the voicemail with CCBR saying, "Hey, we're not sure what we're going to do." And by the time Francisco called them back, they had decided that they were going to choose life for their child. And that's partially because he was there driving the truck. And so thank you, Mr. Francisco Gomez. And again, we're thankful that Providence lined up that this truck would cross paths with these people again to spare another child's life. And even reaching pro-lifers is an important part of the truck project as well. Last year, when I was driving the truck in Toronto, I found out a few days afterward that a young woman had sent in an application to start volunteering with CCBR in the Toronto area. When one of our staff members, Vanessa, asked how she had gotten involved or how she heard about CCBR, she said this was when New York State had recently passed a very, what we could probably call extreme abortion laws, legalizing abortion up until the point of birth and celebrating that in the state. And it was making a lot of headline news. And this girl had heard about that, and some of her friends were excited about or worked up about that news, and she didn't see what exactly the big deal was, even though she was pro-life. It didn't impact her that much. But she said a few days later, as she was walking in downtown Toronto, she saw what she described as a big truck with large images of abortion on the sides driving by her and revealing abortion to the public. And when she saw that truck, she knew that she wanted to get connected and to get involved, to do something personally herself about the issue. And that's when she reached out to us and gave us her contact info. So we're so thankful for stories like that, where not only are pro-choicers impacted, or those who support abortion or who have had abortions or considering it, but also pro-lifers themselves can be stirred just by seeing the truth, by being reminded of it. Just to give our listeners a little bit of insight into, okay, when you do see reactions on the road, what is it like? Do people notice at all? Do they react? Brittany, what kind of experience do you have? If you just have a few tiny little moments, candid moments, do people get angry, happy, upset? What's your stories on that?
I've had all of them. Certainly a lot of people do get angry. Usually it's just kept with honking horns and sometimes them putting up their middle finger, things like that, which it did take me a while to get used to. Like being able to just brush that off and like move on, not get disturbed by it. But other times also I've had people honk and want to give me the thumbs up, and then I'd be afraid to look because I'm like, what if this person is mad at me? But it's always very encouraging when that did happen. Just the encouragement from pro-lifers to keep on doing the good stuff. Yeah, there's been other crazy things, but usually it's not too bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like we feel threatened daily going out on the highways. I know for myself, I do see some people upset, motioning that I should not be doing this. I do also see people giving the thumbs up and encouragement. I remember one time in Toronto, for a few stoplights in a row, a woman was driving beside me, and at the stop, I could see out of the corner of my eye, she was to the right of me. She was waving, trying to get my attention. I thought, I don't need to hear your rant. I don't need to see any gestures. I'm just going to keep driving. But like for 3 stoplights in a row, she kept motioning. And I just thought, okay, fine. What do you want to say to me? And it was a supportive woman, and she was giving me applause and said, yes, I appreciate what you do. So I really appreciate that people are willing to go out of their way to encourage, even in a culture that can seem so hostile to the pro-life message. So those are some of the reactions that we do get. And I think one of the most important reasons why we keep doing something like this is that, in a sense, we're aiming to interrupt people's ordinary day with an awful reality. And now that might seem a bit rude or a bit out of place. I know some people might question, is it really necessary to have images that large and to bring them into public places in a large scale like that? And I can understand that question, but think about how many people might not ever think about abortion unless they see it. People may go towards perhaps an election day when voting pro-life is an option, and they might not even know the abortion issue is out there. Maybe they're not on the internet, they don't see it, but running into it, if they happen to come across it on their way to work or as they're walking to their favorite store for lunch or any other situation, when they see these trucks, they're reminded, wow, this is actually happening. It's brought into their mind. In a sense, they're forced to think about it. They're forced to consider, what, this is actually a real thing. And as has been covered in this live stream already today, abortion has been declared an essential service during the COVID-19 pandemic, when many other elective surgeries are being canceled. This one is allowed to take your preborn children and have them killed. And so that's why it's all the more important that during this time we're out there, that people will see abortion, that they will view it more negatively, that they'll hopefully, we pray, make the decision not to abort themselves, and that they would never support abortion themselves in any way again. Now, just to remind those who may not be familiar, Brittany, what kind of, we've done some research in the past as to what kind of impact simply seeing abortion can have on people. And could you share the numbers, the statistics on that, of how many people see it differently?
Sure. So I don't know, maybe Jonathan might have mentioned it earlier, but I think it's worth mentioning again. We've done some polling in the past based on our postcarding project, polling people on what they thought about abortion before they saw abortion images, and again, after they see these images. And they found that around 67% of people, after seeing an abortion image, now feel more negatively about abortion than they did before. So that's a large percentage of people who are now less likely to get an abortion themselves, or even less likely to encourage another person to get abortions.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that's encouraging to me whenever I consider that. Could our behind the scenes crew please play the short video clip just to give you an idea of what it's like when the truth truck comes into a city in Canada? Perhaps the video isn't loading. That's okay, or if it's coming later, that's all right. Just a short clip to show just a This is a short clip showing in a university setting just how many hundreds of people can be walking by in a busy city, how a truck lingering at a stoplight waiting to turn, as I was there, can reach so many people at once. And we're so thankful for that. We're thankful to you supporters who, again, allow this truck to be on the road. And we do ask that you who are watching would consider supporting, even if it's a small amount, whether it's a large amount or not, that we would be able to continue a project like this, that even during a pandemic, we'd be able to reach thousands of people with the truth about abortion hour by hour on the streets of our biggest cities in Canada. Well, that just about brings us to the end of our time now. So I do thank you, Brittany, for sharing about the truck and your experience in it.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun to be here.